Right now, Kilauea is not erupting. The lava fountains that reached 1,770 feet above the crater rim, taller than the Empire State Building, have stopped. The ash clouds that climbed to 16,000 feet and rained 12-inch chunks of volcanic glass onto a golf course have stopped. The south vent that glowed bright enough to be visible on webcams from miles away is quiet. The ground is still. The tilt meter is rising. Episode 46 is days away, and Kilauea is still poisoning the air over the entire Big Island right now. Not when it erupts. Right now, during the pause. While the magma chamber refills and the scientists in Hilo watch the tilt meter and count the days, even while the summit eruption is paused, Kilauea is releasing 1,000 to 5,000 tons of sulfur dioxide per day, according to the USGS daily update. That is plenty to affect air quality across the island, depending on wind. Hawaii State Department of Health, 1,000 to 5,000 tons, every day, of sulfur dioxide. Into the air above an island of 185,000 people, not from lava fountains, not from an active eruption, from the vents, which never stop, which have not stopped in 16 months, which will not stop when episode 46 begins, and will not stop when episode 46 ends. The eruption is the story everyone is watching. The VOG is the story that has been running for 490 days. Stay with me, because episode 46, forecast for Tuesday through Friday of this week based on tilt meter data, is going to be spectacular. The lava fountains, the ash plume, the aviation color code flipping from yellow to orange to red, all of it worth watching and documenting. But the 490-day story, the one that does not appear in the eruption time-lapse videos and is not in the USGS Daily Status Update headline, is what happens to the 185,000 people living on the Big Island between episodes. To the children in Kona schools who have been breathing VOG-affected air since December 23rd, 2024. To the asthmatic residents of Kau District who have learned to check the wind direction before deciding whether to exercise outdoors. To the tourist in Kailua Kona who booked a whale-watching tour and woke up to hazy skies that the weather app did not predict. There is a peer-reviewed study, published in a medical journal, that tested 1,957 schoolchildren on the Big Island and measured what VOG exposure does to their lungs. We are going to get to those numbers. Stay with me. First, VOG. VOG is a hazy mixture of sulfur dioxide gas and fine particles, PM2. 5. Originating from Kilauea volcano. VOG contains sulfur dioxide that irritates the eyes and causes a range of harmful effects on the lungs, including wheezing, shortness of breath, and difficulty breathing. SO2 reacts with other chemicals in the air to form both liquid and solid particle pollution as it travels downwind. The particles scatter light, making the air appear hazy. Particle pollution can cause asthma attacks, heart attacks, and can kill. Hawaii State Department of Health. Not a nuisance. Not an aesthetic inconvenience. A documented cause of asthma attacks and heart attacks, from a volcano that releases up to 5,000 tons of it per day. The reason to think about it now, even while the summit eruption is paused between fountaining episodes, Kilauea is venting continuously. Wind direction determines everything about who gets it. When northeasterly trade winds are blowing, which is most days in summer, VOG pushes southwest across the island and piles up on the leeward Kona coast. Kailua Kona, Kealakekua, Captain Cook, and the resort strip from Oahu down through South Kona can see hazy skies even when the summit area is crystal clear. Hawaii State Department of Health, Kailua Kona, the primary tourist hub on the Big Island, the city where most visitors to the island arrive, stay, and spend their vacation money, where the resorts and the shops and the restaurants and the whale-watching tours and the coffee farms all operate under skies that, depending on wind, are being fed 1,000 to 5,000 tons of sulfur dioxide per day from a volcano 30 miles away. When the prevailing trade winds are blowing, VOG collects on the Kona side before being blown out to sea. When southerly winds are blowing, VOG affects the high-low side and may blow up the chain to impact islands farther away. Hawaii State Department of Health. On bad VOG days, the degraded air does not stop at the Big Island. It travels to Maui, to Oahu, to Honolulu, to airports, to the homes of people who live 200 miles from the volcano, and have no idea that what they are breathing is the output of the most active volcanic vent in the United States. Here's the number that comes from the peer-reviewed medical literature. In 2002 and 2003, researchers recruited 1,757 4th and 5th grade students across the Big Island into a study testing the hypothesis that high concentrations of sulfur dioxide and sulfate particulates from VOG are associated with respiratory symptoms, asthma, bronchitis, and reduced lung function in children. The study was supported by the National Institutes of Health and the Centers for Disease Control, NIH, CDC, 1,157 children. A full epidemiological study of what Kilauea's emissions do to the lungs of kids who grow up beneath its VOG corridor. The study defined 4 VOG exposure zones across the island based on wind patterns and SO2 monitoring data: low, intermittent, frequent, and acid. High VOG exposure was associated with increased cough and a suggestion of reduced lung function in children in the highest exposure zones. Reduced lung function in children living on a Hawaiian island from a volcano that has not stopped venting in 16 months of the current eruption cycle and was venting at lower but still significant levels for years before this eruption began. Sensitive groups most likely to experience health impacts from VOG include physically active asthmatics, who are most likely to experience serious health effects when exposed to sulfur dioxide. Children, the elderly, and people with pre-existing respiratory or cardiovascular conditions face the highest risk. Negative health symptoms generally occur at gas concentrations well above average background levels, but those concentrations are exceeded on VOG-heavy days in the highest exposure communities. Evacuation, Kilauea's 2018 Lower East Rift Zone eruption, the one that destroyed 716 homes in Leilani Estates, produced SO2 emissions that forced the evacuation and sheltering of downwind communities. That eruption lasted 4 months. The current summit eruption has been producing VOG for 16 months. It has not forced community evacuations because the vents are at the summit, 4,091 feet above sea level, and the caldera is inside the national park. But the SO2 is not staying in the park. It leaves on the wind every single day. Here's the detail that should stop you cold. The Hawaii Department of Health issued an advisory during the eruption, noting that since the eruption began on December 23, 2024, air quality levels at several monitoring stations on Hawaii Island, Maui, and Oahu have varied, with periodic increases in both sulfur dioxide and fine particulate matter PM2. 5. Oahu, the island of Honolulu, nearly 1 million people, receiving periodic increases in sulfur dioxide from a volcano on a different island, the island 200 miles to the southeast, because the VOG travels the length of the Hawaiian chain when wind conditions push it northeast. When southerly winds are blowing, VOG may blow up to impact islands farther up the chain. Hawaii State Department of Health. The volcanic eruption inside Hawaii Volcanoes National Park on the southeastern tip of the Big Island is periodically degrading the air quality in Honolulu. On those days, the residents of Honolulu who are checking the air quality app on their phones are receiving readings driven partly by what is happening 200 miles away inside a national park. And the app does not distinguish between local traffic emissions and sulfur dioxide from Kilauea's summit vents. Even on pause days, between eruption episodes, Kilauea releases 1,000 to 5,000 tons of SO2 per day. When an eruption episode begins, SO2 emissions spike dramatically. During episode 44, SO2 emission rates averaged over 200,000 tons per day, comparable to the 2018 Lower East Rift Zone eruption that destroyed 716 homes. Hawaii State Department of Health, 200,000 tons per day. During episode 44, from a summit eruption contained entirely within the caldera, visible to no one at street level, producing no lava flows, threatening no neighborhoods directly, but emitting SO2 at a rate comparable to the eruption that turned Leilani Estates into a disaster zone. And then episode 44 ended, and the venting continued at 1,000 to 5,000 tons per day. And episode 45 began and ended, and the venting continues now in the pause before episode 46. Now, episode 45. Because the way it unfolded tells you something important about what episode 46 is building toward. Episode 45 began at 1:34 a.m. HST on April 23rd and ended at 10:01 a.m. the same day, a duration of approximately 5 hours. Lava fountaining occurred from the north vent and reached a maximum height of 900 feet, or 270 meters. CBS News, 900 feet, from the north vent. Not the south vent. The south vent, which produced the 1,770-foot fountain during episode 43, was quiet during episode 45's peak activity. Video recorded at around 3 a.m. shows lava fountains from the north vent reaching peak, heights of at least 700 feet or 220 meters, and including the fiery wisps at the tops of the fountains. Heights exceeded 1,000 feet or 300 meters. The video was recorded from a closed area within Hawaii Volcanoes National Park. CBS News, 1,000 feet, at 3 in the morning. From a national park viewpoint that no visitor can access, because the tephra field from previous episodes has buried the roads used to reach it. Prevailing winds were from the north and northeast during episode 45, and no significant tephra fallout was reported at visitor areas of Hawaii Volcanoes National Park or on county roads. However, small particles were reported in communities farther downwind to the southwest. CBS News, small particles, in communities to the southwest, during an episode where the winds carried the plume away from the tourist areas, away from the visitor overlooks, directly toward the communities where people live, where they sleep with their windows open on a warm April night, unaware that the air coming through the screen contains the remnants of a 1,000-foot lava fountain that erupted while they slept. Here is what is not making headlines. The monitoring network that is supposed to track the health consequences of 16 months of continuous fog exposure across the Big Island is not keeping pace with the eruption. Several summit monitoring stations, including the SDH tilt meter, remain offline until scientists can re-establish access across the deep tephra field south of the caldera. HVO's monitoring network is mostly recovered from recent power and storm-related outages. CBS News mostly recovered. As of this morning, the SDH tilt meter, one of the instruments that the scientists use to measure the inflation of the magma chamber and predict the timing of the next episode, is still offline. Not because it failed, because the tephra field from repeated eruptions has buried the road that scientists use to reach it. The eruption is physically preventing scientists from reaching the instruments designed to monitor it, a detail that appeared in the previous script and has not changed. The tilt meter they are using for the episode 46 forecast is the Wekahuna station, not the SDH station. 2 instruments are better than one. One is what they have. The Hawaii Department of Health notes that air quality can change quickly depending on the amount of emissions from the volcano, wind direction, and other meteorological conditions. Particulates and SO2 may increase and fluctuate in various localized areas, causing poor air quality. Communities may be affected by VOG even when the eruption is paused between episodes, even when paused. Even now, tonight, in the communities southwest of the summit, where 1,000 to 5,000 tons of sulfur dioxide is settling on the trade wind and moving toward residential neighborhoods, where the air quality monitors are reporting numbers that the residents have no context to interpret. VOG is a local weather pattern that rarely shows up on vacation checklists until it's already in your eyes. Summer travelers with asthma, children, or older parents should research VOG conditions before arriving on the Big Island. The USGS reports that even between eruption episodes, SO2 emissions are sufficient to affect air quality across much of the island depending on wind. Hawaii State Department of Health. And here is the detail that sits inside that tourist advisory and has never been assembled into a single narrative. The hospitality economy of the Kona coast, the resorts, the restaurants, the fishing charters, the whale-watching tours, the coffee farms, has been operating under intermittent VOG conditions for 490 consecutive days. Not seasonal, not occasional. Every day, wind-dependent, a calculation that every hotel, every outdoor dining venue, every beach resort has been making since December 23rd, 2024, about whether today is a good VOG day or a bad one, and what that means for the guests who paid $500 a night for a room with a view of the Pacific. Now, the forecast. As of Saturday, May 2nd, 2026, the USGS Hawaiian Volcano Observatory forecast window for episode 46 is Tuesday, May 5th through Friday, May 8th. This window may be adjusted based on continuing observations. Daily dispatch. Since the end of episode 45 on April 23rd, the main tilt meter at Kilauea has recorded 0 microradians of inflationary tilt. During episode 45, the tilt meter recorded approximately 0 microradians of deflationary tilt as magma erupted. Typically, the next episode takes place when tilt recovers to approximately the level it was right before the last episode began. CBS News, Garden 99, 0 microradians recovered, 0 needed. The chamber is 56% recharged as of this morning. Consistent glow was observed from the south vent on webcams overnight and intermittently from the north vent. Both vents produced occasional bursts of large flames, likely caused by the ignition of volcanic gases escaping the vent. Daily dispatch flames, not just glow, bursts of ignited volcanic gas escaping from both vents. The gas that is not igniting, the SO2, the CO2, the hydrogen sulfide, is rising invisibly into the atmosphere and beginning its journey southwest on the trade wind. Seismic tremor at the summit continued to ease slightly over the past day. Tremor pulses have weakened and become less defined, but earthquake activity remains elevated. Daily dispatch. Weakened tremor with elevated earthquakes. This is the signature of a magma system in recharge. The rock above the chamber is cracking under increasing pressure, producing the small earthquakes that are the seismic record of the chamber filling. The tremor will strengthen again as the pressure approaches the threshold that opens the vents. When it does, the aviation color code flips from yellow to orange, then to red. Then, within hours, episode 46 begins. And when it begins, the SO2 emissions that have been running at 1,000 to 5,000 tons per day will spike to levels potentially comparable to episode 44's 200,000 tons per day. And the wind that determines who breathes it will decide that number's destination. Now pull back to the full 490-day picture. Kilauea has been erupting episodically since December 23rd, 2024, from 2 vents in Halemaumau. 45 lava fountaining episodes have now occurred, separated by pauses of varying length. CBS News 490 days. Of continuous SO2 emissions, 1,000 to 5,000 tons on the quiet days, tens of thousands of tons during active episodes, 200,000 tons per day during the most intense episodes. Kailauea released 1,800 to 10,000 metric tons of SO2 per day between 2000 and 2010 during its previous extended eruption cycle on the East Rift Zone. That eruption ran continuously for 35 years, from 1983 to 2018, 35 years. The previous Kailauea eruption cycle ran for 35 years. It produced the continuous VOG that the 2002-2003 school children lung function study documented. It produced the chronic respiratory conditions that the communities of Kau District and Kona adapted their lives around. It produced an entire generation of Big Island residents who grew up checking the wind direction the way other people check the weather. That eruption ended in 2018, collapsed into the caldera during the Leilani Estates disaster. And then, in December 2024, the summit vents opened again. 16 months in, 45 episodes completed. Episode 46 forecast for this week. And no indication, from the USGS, from any seismic monitoring, from any deformation data, of when this eruption cycle ends. Each episode has its own characteristics, making it a unique event in the ongoing story of Kailauea. The variability in eruption duration and intensity keeps both scientists and spectators on their toes. National parks, traveler spectators, and 185,000 residents, who are not spectators, who are living inside the eruption's continuous atmospheric output, wind-dependent, day 490 and counting. So ask yourself 3 questions. The 2002-2003 NIH and CDC-funded study of 1,957 Big Island school children found that high VOG exposure was associated with increased cough and reduced lung function in children in the highest exposure zones. That study was conducted during the previous eruption cycle, when SO2 emissions averaged 1,800 to 10,000 tons per day over years. The current eruption cycle has produced 45 episodes in 490 days, with SO2 spike events during episodes 43, 44, and 45 that briefly produced emissions comparable to the 2018 Leilani disaster. The children in Kona schools who were in kindergarten in December 2024 are now completing first grade. Their lungs have been developing for 490 days inside the VOG corridor. Who is conducting the 2026 version of the 2002 school children study? The SDH tilt meter at Kailauea's summit remains offline because the tephra field from repeated eruptions has buried the access road. HVO's monitoring network is described as mostly recovered from recent power and storm-related outages. The episode 46 forecast is being made from the Wekahuna tilt meter. One instrument? Not 2, because the second instrument is unreachable. If the monitoring infrastructure is being degraded by the eruption it is designed to measure, and episode 46 is forecast to be potentially larger than episode 45 based on the longer recharge pause, and the wind during episode 46 will determine which communities receive the SO2 spike. What is the real-time community warning? System for a wind-shifted SO2 event during a major lava fountain episode? And how many of the 185,000 Big Island residents have it on their phones? Daily dispatch. And if the previous Kailauea eruption cycle ran for 35 consecutive years, from 1983 to 2018, producing chronic VOG conditions that an NIH-funded study confirmed were reducing lung function in Big Island school children, and the current cycle began 490 days ago with no defined endpoint, producing 45 episodes and continuous SO2 between them, with episode 46 due this week. At what point does the public health conversation about this eruption expand beyond stay indoors on VOG days to include the cumulative respiratory cost of living downwind of a volcano that has now been continuously active at various intensities for most of the last 43 years? Right now, as you read this, the Wekahuna tilt meter at Kailauea's summit is recording inflationary tilt. 9. 0 microradians recovered since episode 45 ended April 23rd. 16. 0 needed. Consistent glow from the south vent. Occasional flames from both vents as volcanic gases ignite at the opening. Daily dispatch. Episode 46, forecast Tuesday through Friday of this week. The tilt meter will reach its threshold, the tremor will strengthen, the aviation color code will flip to red. And somewhere between Tuesday and Friday, the south vent, the one that reached 1,170 feet in episode 43, will fire again. When it does, the cameras will capture it. The videos will spread. The eruption time-lapse will accumulate millions of views. The USGS will issue its notice. The park will adjust its visitor access. The Big Island tour operators will field calls from people who want to time their trip to see it. And on the Kona coast, 30 miles away, a child in a beachfront neighborhood will wake up that morning to air that smells faintly of sulfur. Her parents will check the wind direction on the VOG app. They will decide whether today is a school day or a stay inside day. They will make that calculation for the 491st consecutive morning since December 23rd, 2024. She has never known a big island without VOG. She is in first grade. Her lung function was tested in a study 20 years before she was born that predicted this would affect her. Even when the eruption is paused, off-gassing continues and emissions remain high. Hawaii State Department of Health. The VOG is the story that fills the lungs. Episode 46 is coming between Tuesday and Friday. And then episode 47. And then the pause. And the 1,000 to 5,000 tons per day. And the trade wind that decides every morning whose heir it becomes.